On the subject of numbers, um, now first of all, we should cover the fact that you are a pianist. Um, you could easily have gone on with a career as a jazz pianist, which you were for a while, or as a classical pianist, having studied with Madame Rosina Levine, among others. Um, so you have that ability to sit down and play what you have written against a sequence that you look on a video
I do use
scope.
the piano as a kind of tool, Robert. That's right. I don't play as well as I used to because I don't keep my hands in shape. But a lot of composers who don't play piano don't work in the same way that I do. And having started life as a pianist, I do use it in that way.
How about some of the people with whom you've worked, say, with whom you've studied, Bernard Herrmann or Alfred Newman or Franz Waxman?
Mm-hmm.
Did they work in much that same fashion of playing music against a film?
Yeah, yeah.
So they were all pianists.
Not Herrmann. Alfred Newman was quite a good pianist. Franz Waxman was. I don't think I ever heard Franz play piano, but I know he was a pianist as a young man. Bernard Herrmann was a violinist and when he played the piano, it was something to behold, something to really hear, because it was just simply awful. But his ideas were orchestral and fabulous, and his work, he's one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really studied with any of those men, Robert, formally, but I worked with them as a pianist, those three gentlemen and some others, in their orchestras as a youngster. And that's really, I think I learned more from, just through osmosis, really, from being around those men.
Where did you study composition?
I started in California. My first teacher was a man called Robert Van Epps, with whom I studied piano and composition and orchestration. And I then studied those subjects at UCLA on an undergraduate level. I then took some lessons from Arthur Olof Anderson, who was a famous composition teacher from Chicago, passed away since. And then the best-known teacher that I have was Mario Tedesco, who was Castellanova Tedesco, who your classical listeners will know, who lived in Los Angeles since the years after the war and the years that I was growing up there, and taught a lot of young people, and myself and Andre Previn and others of our generation. I think he really taught everyone that ever amounted to anything at all out there in those years.
He was your principal composition
I would say
teacher.
so, yeah.
But
That's
he didn't
right.
write for films.
Oh, yes, he did.
He did?
Yeah. Just incidental to his composition teaching. I can't tell you the names of them, but he did a couple films at Columbia, and I think he did 1 or 2 films at Fox. Before I met him, he did them, I think, middle 40s, perhaps during the war.
The point I'm reaching for, of course, is that writing for films is a very special kind of writing. I mean, not only that you are depicting something or augmenting something, supporting something that is visual, maybe even it goes a step further than program music, because the program is there and everybody sees it and knows it, and somehow you have to write the music that goes with it. But beyond that, it's the time thing. When a composer writes free-form, a fantasia, symphony, concerto, whatever, time is his baby. He can stretch a phrase out or he can condense it. But with a film, you are restricted to a very specific amount of time, and you have to make your statement in that time. There are formulas.
In one sense, I suppose, Robert, that's a help, because we know a certain sequence is 1.5 minutes, and there's no question in our minds whether a question that a classical composer might say, is it too long, is it too short, does it have the right shape? We haven't got that question. The shape is already predetermined.
Yeah.
So in one sense, it's a help. But what people can't possibly realize is the amount of detail, of kind of kinetic detail that is put into film music. They would only understand it if you took it away. and it's very hard. We're on radio, not television. It's even hard on television, but even harder on radio. But I would try to explain that every phrase, not only is the length of it important, but the loudness of it, the relative dynamic of it, or softness of it, the kind of push and shove thing that it has. It's like the taking off of the spaceship in E.T. at the end. The ship goes up, and it goes up to a certain point, and then it whooshes across the sky and becomes a rainbow and does something else. I mean, that's one little event that maybe is, I don't know, 10 seconds at the end of a whole reel of music. It's 10 minutes long. But if the orchestra builds just in the right way and just has a lift as the spaceship goes off and then shifts into another gear as it whooshes off to the left and becomes the rainbow, the sequence is successful. But if I miscue it, if the orchestra is late on the takeoff and early on the whoosh across, the eye goes crazy. The eye and the ear don't match. Yeah. But once it's exactly in sync, the viewer can sit back and listen and enjoy the experience and not even realize that the ear has been manipulated as precisely as the eye has been.
Now, a neophyte composer for film sits down and he looks at a series of images and realizes that at this point the music has to start and at this point it has to end. He may have an idea in his head, he or she, of the general feel of what he wants to write. And he starts a stopwatch. It's 14.6 seconds. Then there's a formula. The duration equals the total number of beats times 60 divided by the metronome mark. So he knows how many measures and or beats or so on, and then writes within that frame. That's a neophyte. You've been doing this for 60-plus films for 20-plus years. How much of that mathematics do you have to...
Well, I do it all the time, but it's almost second nature to me now, Robert. I rarely use click tracks, which is like a metronome, really. It will keep you exactly in tempo to the film, although occasionally I use them. But normally, if I have a sequence or a section of a sequence is 14.6 seconds, what I will do is look at that 14 seconds of film and try to decide, is the action that takes place in that 14 seconds accelerating, or is it slowing down, or is it remaining the same? Do we want it to be exactly like that, or should it get quicker and quicker and quicker and more and heated up and more excited as the 14 seconds go?
Why you don't use a click track.
Yeah, that's it. And so I say to myself, the biggest question is the one you said. How many beats? How fast is it? After a while in film, you get a feel for the speed of the film, a feel for the speed of the action. If you don't get the speed really right, the viewer will sense something very wrong. The speed in a car chase, for example, if the cars are really whooshing by the camera, that's one speed. If the cars are running by in a long shot, that's another speed, another perceived speed, I should say.
Yeah.
So that the counting of these beats is the first and very important thing to do, but my question is always, should they be even or not? Even is one choice, slowing is another, accelerating is another, always changing is another. The biggest fun with beats always that I've had was that shark picture with Jaws, because the thing of dum bum 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 bum, that thing, which is so rhythmically simple, and which makes it easy and good to manipulate, is the kind of thing that if you want to just tease the audience by going dum 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 dum, stop, or do it slower or faster, it's wonderful. And naturally it's going pounding very quickly when the thing is close. It's like an excited heartbeat. The moment of real excitement, you can almost see it. The heart is so big. Speed, the speed of the film, and sensitivity to it, and the ability of a composer to help the speed of a film and give it rhythm and give it timing. I think, in my mind, is even more important than the melody, than the big tune. Because you cut film for speed, you cut it for tempo. The director shoots it for tempo. If a hand comes into the shot to grab a telephone, If it's somebody very excited and needs the police, that's one tempo. If it's somebody that's calling room service, that's another tempo. I mean, how do you grab the phone? It's depends on what's behind it. Everything, every movement of the body, of machine, of all of that needs to be given thought relative to time.
There are long sequences in film where the music is it. I mean, there may be some sound effects, but there's no dialogue. Certainly, the ending of Close Encounters is illustrative, or the beginning of Black Stallion. You didn't write that, did you?
No, that's
somebody else wrote that.
Carmine Coppola.
Two places where there isn't any dialogue, but the music, the orchestra has to do it. And if you are watching that on some place where you can turn the sound off, you see the incredible difference that it makes, the impact that music has.
Music is tremendously important to the whole art of film, thus far at least. I think it always will be, Robert. It's what you suggest, the experiment of turning the music off and how suddenly everything has changed. Not only have we lost the life of the thing, we've lost also some kind of some metronome, some clock. What I myself and all of my colleagues that work in this field all tell you is that if you have a 2-minute sequence and you run it just blind, cold, with no music, the 2 minutes seem like 2 minutes. If you then run it with a well-scored orchestra track, the 2 minutes can seem like 1:45, can seem like 1 minute. It can seem like 3 minutes if it's something that you want to draw out and make more sustained. The music affects the sense of continuum of time in the way the eye perceives the film. No question about it. Every one of my colleagues would say that.
And of course, another and vital thing that the music does is to manipulate the emotions of the viewer.
Exactly.
If you could have the same sequence in film with two different pieces of music. I'll take another film that you didn't write the music for, Psycho, building up in the shower sequence, the music behind the approach.
Fantastic.
Put in Tara's theme in there, and that
and you've got another film. That's right.
But that the sting, the building up of suspense, the vibrating chord, that kind of. Now, some of those, of course, are devices that have been used and are still used in radio drama and television drama, and there are devices that a composer can fall back on. But I would assume that any composer who's trying to write an original score is going to avoid them as much as possible. And
to some degree, you always try to be original, but there are things that effects really in the whole world of theater that are really part of the tools of what we do. Same way that a stage director uses light, probably not all that much differently than the Globe Theater people tried to do with their candles in Shakespeare's time.
Let's draw, for instance, let's say that you were scoring Shakespeare's Othello, and it's the scene where Othello is at the bedside of Desdemona and raises the dagger in the air. What would come into your mind in terms of it's tough to pull that out of context.
I think the first thing that ran through my mind is how loud should we be? I can't tell you why, but or as the knife is raised, should the orchestra make any kind of loud emphasis or not? It would depend on the style of the production. Would it be melodramatic if we did that? Maybe we shouldn't have any music. Maybe it would be a greater surprise if we didn't. All of these questions, we would want to discuss. That's also a very big one emerges there. Is there any music? Do we want it? I think a large part of the art of doing this is knowing when not to play music. And when the knife is revealed, we may want to see it and not hear anything.
There are, of course, scenes where music is mandated. Music is actually part of the scene. I'm thinking of one scene, for example, in The Empire Strikes Back. I'm pretty sure is a terrific barroom scene.
Oh, with the little creatures.
Yeah.
In Star Wars, yeah.
Is that Star Wars?
That's Star Wars. Yes, the little
the cantina band.
Cantina band, the little extraterrestrial guys playing the saxophones. Yeah.
Let's listen to that.